What makes a 200-year-old feud between a witty country girl and a profoundly proud aristocrat the absolute ultimate blueprint for modern storytelling? I mean, think about it. Long before our modern rom-coms, there was one story that set the gold standard for how two completely opposite people could absolutely despise each other, only to fall hopelessly in love.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're meticulously breaking down Jane Austen's timeless masterpiece, Pride and Prejudice. But we aren't just reading between the lines here. We're going to look at this classic through the brilliant critical lens of literary historian George Saintsbury. Together, we'll examine the actual mechanics of this enduring story, deconstruct the psychological warfare between our main characters, and figure out exactly why this specific misunderstanding has captivated audiences for over 2 centuries. The blueprint for romance, setting the stage for literature's greatest clash.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand this story, we've got to look at the microcosm of Austen's world, right? This isn't some epic, bloody war. It's a 19th century English village where social and financial survival are literally the highest stakes imaginable. To navigate this, Austen sets up an absolutely crucial distinction, one derived from Mary Bennet's musings. Pride relates to our opinion of ourselves, while vanity relates to what we would have others think of us. It's a subtle difference, but it is everything. Darcy has immense pride, a sky-high opinion of himself and his family, but he entirely lacks the vanity that would make him care about pleasing the locals. Elizabeth, on the other hand, well, she allows her vanity, which gets severely wounded by a slight, to completely blind her otherwise razor-sharp judgment.
Section 2. First Impressions at Meryton. The spark that ignites the prejudice.
So, the friction begins almost immediately at a local ball, the Meryton Assembly, where public perception dictates your entire social standing. While everyone else is eagerly mingling, Mr. Darcy stands completely aloof, and he delivers the ultimate inciting incident. She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. He says this about Elizabeth Bennet, totally unaware she's standing close enough to hear the whole thing. Ouch, right? This single, incredibly stiff insult anchors the start of Elizabeth's deep-seated prejudice. Her pride is mortified, and from this moment on, her naturally sharp mind is absolutely dedicated to finding flaws in Mr. Darcy, just to justify her immediate dislike of him.
Now, what's really fascinating here is George Saintsbury's critical lens on how Elizabeth handles this insult. Any other heroine of that era might have been totally crushed or just retreated in tears. But Saintsbury notes that Elizabeth's primary charm is her cleverness and a completely unique fearlessness. She is entirely destitute of ill nature. She actually playfully retells the story of the insult to her friends. Saintsbury points out that she has this perfect freedom from the idea that men may bully her. She isn't crushed by Darcy's wealth or his status. Rather, she's empowered by her own lively, fearless nature to just stand her ground.
Section 3. The Trap of Prejudice. How Wickham's charm spins a web of deceit.
Enter Mr. Wickham. With her vanity stung by Darcy, Elizabeth is perfectly primed to accept literally anyone who validates her negative opinion, and Austen brilliantly contrasts these two men for us. Wickham, he has an amiable appearance, he's a smooth talker, and he readily shares this fabricated sob story about his stolen inheritance. Darcy, meanwhile, has stiff manners, is fiercely private, and utterly refuses to lower himself to publicly defend his character against local gossip. Austen uses this dynamic to trap Elizabeth, basically making her a willing, almost eager victim to Wickham's weaponized charm. And this brilliantly illustrates just how manipulative Wickham truly is. Listen to how he twists Darcy's actual, true traits, like his filial pride and loyalty to his family, into a narrative that perfectly feeds Elizabeth's existing prejudice. Wickham admits Darcy is honorable and just with the rich, but he frames it all as a product of malicious, arrogant pride. It's a highly calculated psychological play, and because it so perfectly aligns with Elizabeth's bias, she just swallows it whole.
Section 4. The Turning Point. The Disastrous Proposal and the Letter of Truth.
This brings us to the most explosive collision of the story at Hunsford Parsonage, where months of tension finally snap. Let's trace how this builds. Weeks ago at the Meryton Assembly, Darcy's unchecked pride leads him to insult Elizabeth. Yesterday at Hunsford, his arrogance hits its peak with a disastrous, highly offensive proposal that she furiously rejects. But today, the rejection forces a massive psychological shift. Darcy hands her a letter. This single act forces an evolution that will eventually lead us to his reformed, genuinely polite manners in the future at his estate, Pemberley.
So the crucial point is how this letter acts as the absolute fulcrum of the story. Darcy surgically dismantles every single piece of Wickham's lies. He explains he separated Jane and Bingley only because Jane's quiet nature made her seem indifferent. But more importantly, he exposes Wickham's true nature, his financial waste, his moral corruption, and the genuinely shocking revelation that Wickham tried to secretly elope with Darcy's own 15-year-old sister just for her fortune.
When Elizabeth first receives this letter, her reaction is furious. She is firmly persuaded he could have no valid explanation, reading it with strong prejudice, desperately trying to find fault. But as she rereads it, the logic is undeniable. She remembers Wickham's inconsistencies, and she remembers Darcy's quiet virtues. She is forced to confront the crushing realization that her own judgment, the very thing she prided herself on, was entirely compromised by her vanity.
Section 5. The Truth Revealed. Actions speak louder than pride.
When Elizabeth later visits Darcy's estate at Pemberley, she encounters a man whose demeanor has entirely softened. He has truly taken her criticisms to heart, but this newfound connection is suddenly shattered by a massive crisis. Lydia Bennet, Elizabeth's youngest sister, elopes with the deceitful Mr. Wickham. Now, we really cannot overstate the urgency and stakes here. In 19th century society, a young woman running off out of wedlock wouldn't just ruin her own reputation, it would result in the complete social and financial ruin of the entire Bennet family. All seems entirely lost.
This is where actions shatter pride completely through a daring behind-the-scenes rescue. First, Darcy immediately leaves his estate to track Wickham down in the slums of London. Second, he forces Wickham into a legal marriage with Lydia. Third, to actually make Wickham agree to this, Darcy pays off Wickham's massive, crippling debts and buys him a military commission. And finally, the most important step, he conceals all his involvement. He demands secrecy because he utterly refuses to force Elizabeth into feeling grateful to him. He does it purely out of love and honor, definitively proving his character has evolved far past his initial arrogance. Darcy's silent heroism perfectly reflects what George Saintsbury observes about Austen's writing. Saintsbury notes that Austen knew two things which only genius knows. The one was humanity, and the other was art. You see, Austen doesn't need sprawling warfields to show heroism or human flaws. By having Darcy quietly sacrifice his wealth and mingle with a man he absolutely despises just to save the family of the woman who rejected him, Austen constructs a perfect cosmic microcosm of human nature. It's entirely real and completely devoid of theatrical falsehoods.
Which leaves us with a final thought, directly inspired by Saintsbury himself. What is the good of seeking for the reason of charm? It's simply there. Through a meticulous balance of pride, prejudice, realization, and growth, Austen created a pairing of absolute literary perfection. So, I'll leave you with this. Can any modern hero or heroine truly compete with the enduring, complex, and transformative love of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet? Think about that as you consider what makes a story truly timeless. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the narratives you love.